Hello everyone, in today's webinar we are going to talk about automation in accounting. To get started, let's look at the user experience video from Microsoft.
So G&J Pepsi, we've been around for about 100 years. We have 13 locations in central, southern Ohio, eastern Kentucky. We have about 1,600 employees. We got into PowerApps about 18 months ago. We were in during the beta program. We really drive to kind of look for those next cutting edge technologies that's going to enhance our business, enhance revenue, and cut costs, and also kind of just streamline our business and make our people more efficient so we can sell more product. So we were trying to do a lot more with mobile, but we didn't have any professional developers on staff in order to do that. When we saw PowerApps, it just felt like a no-brainer for us. We fell in love with it. We were working with it even before it went to general availability. When Microsoft did launch PowerApps in GA or general availability, we went live with our first application.
So Eric has never really done a lot of app development around here or any real programming development for us. Most of his work has been in the cloud space. So when he took over at PowerApps, it was really a new beginning for him to start programming apps for G&J. So it was unique to see how quickly he went from almost zero programming skills to developing a full app and rolling that out in literally 3 to 4 months.
The Store Audit Center in PowerApps allows us to quickly communicate any kind of tasks that need to complete in the marketplace to our account managers and communicate driver notes to our drivers, routing instructions to our logistics team, and also follow up on any out of stocks or signage issues.
We can't have empty shelves, right? We just can't lose to our competition just because we have empty shelves. That's where PowerApps comes into play. That's where Flow comes into play. That's where Power BI comes into play. They're helping us, ensure proper execution. They're helping us improve on execution. They're exposing where we're not executing.
Every day we have 70 to 80 trucks running out of this building. They have 140 different parking spots that those trucks can be put in. As you can see, all the trucks look the same. If you're a driver, how do you know which truck is yours for the day?
Why do you need an application to tell a guy what spot you're in? But when you talk about the size and the amount of trucks that Columbus has, that we can't have drivers who have certain windows to meet to deliver products that our customers walking through our parking lot.
So we developed an app that allows the warehouse to mark where each truck is parked. In the morning, the driver simply opens his phone, checks his email, and it tells him exactly where his truck is parked.
What we discovered with PowerApps and Power BI and Flow is that when used in conjunction with each other, it created a digital feedback loop that allowed us to collect data that we've never been able to collect before, store it, and then Power BI is pulling that in, and then we're able to report on it and make sense of what we're seeing, make sense of what we've never seen before.
Power BI allows us to look for trends where we're strong and at the same time trends where we're weak, and allows us to make any adjustments in how we go to market.
We feel like there's hundreds, if not thousands, of processes that we feel like PowerApps, Power BI, and Flow are going to allow us to tackle those challenges that we have that are not digital currently.
So the journey for us really with PowerApps and Power BI started with Power BI. So along that journey, we decided that it wasn't just about reporting on the data. There was so much new information that they wanted to show in Power BI. So Power BI actually helped drive PowerApps for us because we actually used PowerApps to gather that information to then deliver it downstream to Power BI. So in essence, Power BI kind of was the birth of PowerApps for us.
Okay, so now let's talk about the agenda of today's webinar. So today, in this webinar, we are going to cover the Power Platform component. Then we are going to look at an example of a Power App, followed by an example dashboard from Power BI. We are going to look at an example Power Virtual Agent, which is a chatbot. Then we are going to deep down into Power Automate, in which we will very specifically look at accounts payable automation with a demonstration. Then we will discuss about the benefits of API automation, followed by the Q&A session. So what is Power Platform? Power Platform is a powerful business application platform that comprises of Power Apps, Power BI, Power Virtual Agent, and Power Automate. PowerApps is a low-code, no-code development platform that enables us to create applications with ease. Power BI is an intelligence and analytics tool which helps you analyze, visualize, and gain insights onto a business and helps you figure out the bottlenecks in business so that those can be resolved to make the business much more efficient. For virtual agents are like chatbots that can answer the queries when somebody is trying to access a service or by customers when they're trying to query something. Power Automate is like an RPA. RPA is robotic process automation, which will help us to minimize the repetitive tasks by creating automated workflows, which can connect to either Microsoft or any third-party application, and it will help you by decreasing the errors and by decreasing the time required to do those entries. Now let's get started and let's look at one of the example of PowerApps. In this scenario, I'm going to show you a quality management app that is built using PowerApps. This quality management app has 4 specific function sets. The first one, you can do a quality test. You can look up a quality test. You can create a walkthrough. Walkthrough is nothing but when suppose if you have a new user in place and they don't know what to do, you just want to guide them. That's a walkthrough. Then you can book your return. So let's say I'm trying to do a quality test. So in this case, I don't even have to enter my serial number or model numbers here. Just by clicking on scan, I can point my camera towards a QR code or a barcode and it will automatically capture those information and fill those up for you. Once it knows which particular model number are you looking for, it shows you all the quality tests that can be performed for that particular model. And these are high-level quality tests. Each one of them has multiple subsections. So in this scenario, if I go into check physical conditions of the lens, this has these many parameters here. So now let's say a new user is trying to be here, right? He doesn't know what he has to do. So in this case, that person can actually listen to the narration that you're seeing in the bottom, and he will know what he has to do. So then, depending upon that, an appropriate option can be selected, and then it can be posted. So while you are trying to post, you can also have validation level, which will ask you whether you want to submit it or do you want to go back and correct something. After this is submitted, the next step is always about looking up what you have already done. So we have previews. In that case, whatever was submitted, you can just go and look at those tests, and there is also a right hand side button. So if you click on it, it will also show you any attachment or anything else that you have there. Then again, the last section is always a return. So let's say somebody returns something. So this app also captures any returns that were done. So if you can see, it says, right, the model number is this, the serial number is this, the reason is screw missing. It also captures much more details. If you click on the right hand side button, it will give you much more details. And the important thing about this is the person who did the quality test, his information was captured. So when an item was returned, using the serial number, the system will be able to tell you that this particular test was done by that particular person. So you can go and query them. What happened that this particular item was returned? If you tested it, the screw should be missing in the first place, and you can make your process a bit more efficient. Now let's talk about Power BI. So once we are coming into Power BI, the first dashboard that you see is what we call a storyteller. Not every time we want to look at the information that is present on the screen, right? So just looking at this storyteller, 2 thumbs up. That means everything is balanced. It looks good. So I didn't even have to read the entire figures to know. The other dashboard is the top 5. So it's actually showing me the top 5 collection by customer, by salesperson, brand, product. Again, this can be completely customized according to business requirements. And not just this. Let's say even when we are talking about sales, right? So many times it happens that in a meeting we are like, what will happen if I increase my sale by 15%? Power BI can answer that too. So you can select what is the percentage of sale increase you're looking at, and depending upon how much percentage you select, it will show you what your figures will look like. And it's not just about sales. What about production? It also has a way of capturing production quantity by posting dates, and also it shows you a forecast on the right hand side corner that for the next 15 days, how will the production quantity forecast will look like. Not just about production quantity, it can also show you about the wastages. It can also forecast the wastages for you. Okay, now let's go and look at an example of Power Virtual Agent. In this scenario in Power Virtual Agent, I'm acting as a customer. And what I need to know is, what is my project status? So rather than picking up a phone and calling someone, I'm just logging into this chatbot app and I'm like, hey, I'm the customer. It automatically authenticates you. So it asks you, which project are you looking for? So the system actually gives you a list of all the projects. And hey, these are the different tasks. So there can be n number of tasks, right? So it's asking you, does your task have a priority? You can select between high, medium, and low. And you can also select your task ID. After doing the same, it gives you the status of the task. In this case, it says, hey, it is open. This is the description of the task. It will be completed on so and so dates and so on. Once everything is done, you can keep on asking it more questions, or you can say, hey, I'm done with it. Once you do that, it will actually say, okay, can you just rate your experience? So it will also capture the user experience for you or the customer experience, whether he is happy with it or not. If he is not, you can always work on how to improve it. If it's good, you can always work on how to make it even better. Now let's go deep down into AP automation flow. When I say AP, I mean account payable. The scenario that we are trying to cover now is when you are trying to make a payment to your vendor. So the entire process starts when the vendor asks you for a payment. So let's say he sends you a mail onto your inbox stating, hey, these are my 2 invoices or 3 invoices. Can you just make a payment for me? So once those come in, the Power Automate knows a mail has arrived with attachment. It picks those up. It sends them onto the AI model, which will extract all the relevant information from that invoice, send it on to Teams, where you will see an approval screen stating, hey, would you like to approve it? So you can go into one of 3 directions. You can either say, yes, I would like to approve it, I would like to reject it, or I would like it to be a manual entry. Well, the flows can be entirely dependent on the business requirement and how the business processes are currently in place. In this case, let's say somebody selects approve. So the UI flows take over, where the UI stands for user interface flow, takes over. In this case, I'm using Dynamics Snap, but it's not just restricted to Dynamics Snap. You can use SAP, you can use Oracle, you can use any third-party application in its place, and the flow will still hold and work good. After that, what happens is, after doing the entries for you, it will again send you an intimation back to Teams stating, hey, this entry has been done. Then it moves on to the next, and so on. If somebody selects reject, in this scenario, I am just moving past the entire flow and sending an intimation onto Teams stating, hey, this entry has been rejected for a specified reason. Similarly, for manual, it just makes an entry onto the Teams. The rejected and manual flow can again be completely customized as per your business requirements. In this case, I'm just diverting it onto Teams and keeping it as a intimation. Now let's go and look at an actual demonstration on how this will work. So the entire process starts with a mail onto your mailbox. In this scenario, I'm using Microsoft Power Automate, and in the backend, I'm using Microsoft Dynamics Snap. So I'm expecting a mail to be sent by a vendor. I'm acting as my own vendor as of now. So now let's go and look at how the mail would look like. So let me just switch on to my mail here. Okay, so I am sending 3 specific mails. If you can see, 3 specific attachments. I have 3, 4, and 5. I'm acting as my own vendor, so let me send it to myself. I click on send. So it comes onto my inbox. This is where the flow takes over. What the flow will do is, it will go through each one of these invoices sequentially and process the same. Let me try to switch on to my flows here. That is my Microsoft Teams. So let me just go there. Okay, so now that I'm in my flow, if you see, I got a request here, right? Please look at to approve the same. Now let's open one of the invoices here. Let's look at the money. It says 6001.20, 6345458,464. So this is my invoice number. That is the information that is displayed here. Okay, so what do I want to do with this? I want to approve the same. So in this scenario, I select approve. I type in my comment, approving the same. Let me put up some date here, a time, maybe. Okay, I click on submit. Once I click on submit, what happens is, this is where the flow takes over again. Now, let me just bring it to my left hand side, and if you see on the right hand side, I have a remote desktop screen open, right? You will see some action happening there. If you see, the Microsoft Dynamics now is beginning to open, right? Let me make it a bit bigger so that we can look at it in a bit more detail. Okay, so now it has opened Microsoft Dynamics on itself. I am completely hands off the system, and depending on the data that it has extracted from the system, it is starting to fill it up. Look how fast it is. It knows it's a vendor. It puts a Fabricam. It is selecting Fabricam as of now. Then it goes put up the message. If you remember, we said approve the same, right? It put that here, and the money. Then it also extracted money from that. It knows it's 6001.20, and then it posts it. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't just stop there. After posting, it also closes Dynamics Nav on itself, so to save licenses. Cool. Now, if you remember, there were three separate invoices, right? Now, before that, let's go into our AP department and into processed invoices. And if you can see, it has actually brought that information here, that this invoice has been successfully processed. Now, if you see, the flow has sent a card on the bottom, right? So this is the second invoice. Again, the information extracted from that invoice is right on your screen. You can select what you want to do with it. I say I want to do a manual entry. I'll put up my comment. Manual entries to be done. Okay. So once I've done with that, I can just click on submit. And what it will do is, depending upon how the flow has been designed, it will go back into my Teams channel. Let's go into the manual entries here. And if you can see, it has placed it here. So the person who goes into that particular Teams channel will be able to know that these entries have to be done manually. Now let me again go back to my chat here and then go into the next flow card. So this is the third. If you remember, there were three separate invoices, right? So this is the third one. So I am selecting reject here because this is the third flow. So I can just type in that. Just give me a second. The spelling. Okay. Let me correct that too. Just a second. Okay. So now I'm going to submit the thing. Once I click on submit, it knows that it has been rejected. So again, it goes back onto the appropriate Teams channel and places it onto that specific channel. For example, I have a very specific channel for rejection. So let me go into my Teams here. Then I go to rejected invoices. Okay. If you see, now the entry is here. That means it has been rejected. So the entire thing that happened was, depending upon the criteria selected or the options that you selected, whether it was approved or it was manual or it has rejected, the system did the data entry for you and also gave you an intimation back onto your Teams channel for somebody who wants to look it up, whether which invoice has already been processed, which have to be done manually, or which were rejected, and so on. Now let's go back into our flow that we saw a bit earlier and talk about the same. So what happened was, we received our mail onto the Outlook. After that, the Power Automate took over. It sent it to the AI model, which extracted all the relevant information. It came to Teams, where it gave us the intimation whether you want to approve it, reject it, or what you want to do with it, depending upon an option. When we said approve, it opened Dynamics Nav, did the data entry for you, and then gave an intimation back to the Teams on the Teams channel setting, hey, this is already processed. If you selected rejected, it did the same, and when you selected manual, it did the same as well. Now let's talk about the benefits of automation. So in the last demonstration that you saw, what we did was, as soon as we received an invoice onto our inbox, we went ahead and processed the same. So what we are trying to do is, we are automating the invoice process that can lead to 90% reduction in invoicing cost. And why do I say that? The cost per invoice process is equal to the total account payable cost divided by the number of invoices that are being processed. So we are seeing a 90% reduction on the same. There will be fewer payment errors because the AI is extracting the data and pasting it for you. So there is no manual entry being done. Nobody will type 500 instead of 5,000. That's not going to happen. The cycle times are faster. We just saw in the demonstration how quick it did the entry for you. The time, when I talk about time and money, what I mean is, I'm just comparing the amount of time it takes to do an entry to the money being spent on making sure that entry is successfully done is also drastically reduced. Coming to performance benefit, of course, the efficiency and performance is being improved here. When I say AI-based two-way, three-way matching, in this case, when we are posting an entry, we can actually implement a two-way or a three-way matching depending upon the business process, so that we have a well-defined system in place. We can also have approval workflow. If you remember, we just saw in the demonstration, we have approval workflow in place. So we can say whether this invoice can be approved or not. We can have multiple workflows that decide whether what to do. We can have multiple levels of approvals and so on. The last one is the payment request. So once we're talking about payment request, in this particular scenario, the vendor was requesting you a payment on that invoice, right? So this is how we automated it. So as soon as it comes onto your mailbox, this is not a chance that somebody forgot to look at that mail. It was handled, it was sent to you onto your teams. You have selected what to do with it. So it actually decreases the amount of time that it requires to complete one payment processing. So the cycle times come down. Let's talk about some of the performance areas and the benefits. So the invoice processing costs are nearly 6 times lower. And the formula for the invoice processed is the total accounts payable cost divided by the number of invoices. Let's say once you receive an invoice, then it takes 5 or 6 different people to process the same. All of their costs keep on getting added for processing that invoice, right? So in this case, that is lower. A single invoice processing time is also higher. As we saw right now, if suppose a user had to do this entry, he would roughly take 6 minutes to do the same. An automation system took about 40 seconds to do the same. That's the difference we are talking about. And the last one is the invoice exceptions rate. So what does the invoice exceptions rate mean? The invoice exception rate in this case means the error that are in the invoices. A mismanagement of invoices, the invoice is getting lost. Or let's say somebody doing a error while typing the information onto the invoices. And so on. These come down by 57%. Okay, so this actually ends the demonstration. Now we are ready for the Q&A. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have.